Hi everyone, in today's lesson, I will give you the revision on Chapter 9, Variation. Okay, so first, I want to recall your memory. So do you still remember in the chapter of variation, how many types of variations that we have learned and what are they? And the answer is, we have learned 4 variations. And they are direct variation, inverse variation, joint variation, and the last one is partial variation. Then, do you still remember what is the steps in doing questions about variation? And there are 2 steps. The first step is we have to set up equation using the variation constant. So for direct, inverse, and joint variation, there is only one variation constant, that is k. As for partial variation, there are 2 variation constants, and we will use k1 and k2 to represent that. Then for the next step, we want to solve the variation constant. Then we have to use some mathematical techniques. So in solving variation constant k, that means for direct, inverse, and joint variation, we will use the techniques of substitution. Okay. As for partial variation, as there are two unknowns, k1 and k2. So in this case, we have to solve k1 and k2 using simultaneous equation. Then, let's go through the variations one by one. And the first one is direct variation. First, we have to identify the keywords representing direct variation. So please help me to take out your highlighter. For A to E, please help me to highlight the keywords representing direct variation. Okay, for part A, varies directly. For part B, varies directly. For part C, directly proportional. For part D, directly proportional. And for part E, varies directly. So these are the keywords to remind us that we are going to use direct variation. Afterwards, we can set up the equation. So for part A, y equals to kx squared. Part B, y equals to k, the square root of x. Part C, r equals to k times the cube of w. And for part D, w is equals to k l. And the last one, part E, p is equals to k r squared, the square of the radius r. The second variation is inverse variation. And again, the first step, we have to identify the keywords representing inverse variation. And what are they? Part A, varies inversely. Part B, varies inversely. Part C, inversely proportional. Part D, varies inversely. And part E, inversely proportional. So when you see these kind of keywords, they remind us to use inverse variation. Afterwards, we can set up the equation again. So for inverse variation, the unknown will be put in the denominator, and for the variation constant k, we will put it in the numerator. So for part A, w is equals to k over t to the power 3. And for part B, the square of x. So y is equals to k over x squared. Okay, and for part C, y is equals to k over the square root of x. Part D, C is equals to k over the cube of its weight w. So that is k over w cube. And finally, part E, t is equals to k over v, the speed. The third variation is joint variation. So please remember that for joint variation, there must be more than two variables. So let's go through the keywords together. So part A, varies jointly. Part B, varies jointly. Part C, the keyword is and. Similarly, for part D and part E, the keyword is and. Okay? Then we can set up the equation. So for joint variation, we just put all the things together using one unknown, k. Okay? So for part A, x equals to ky w squared. Okay, and for part B, we have p equals to kx and then square root of y. For part C, v varies directly as h, so we have v equals to kh. And then we have inversely as the cube of r. So for the cube of r, we have to put it in the denominator, so over r cube. And then part D, f varies directly as m. That means we have f equals to k m. And next we have inversely as a and d squared. So for a and d squared, we have to put it in the denominator. So finally, for part E, r varies inversely as the square of m. So we have r equals to k over m squared. And next we have directly as n and the square root of l. Okay, so for n and the square root of l, we have to put it in the numerator. Then the last variation is partial variation. So for partial variation, there is only one keyword, that is partly. So when we see the word partly, that means we have to use partial variation. Okay, so for partial variation, there are two variation constants, k1 and k2. Then we can set up the equation. So for part A, p is partly constant, that means k1, and partly varies directly as y, so k2y. So when we combine these two information, we have p equals to k1 plus k2y. And then part B, s is partly constant, k1, and partly varies inversely as y cube, so k2 over y cube. And we have s equals to k1 plus k2 over y cube. For part C, w partly varies directly as x, so k1x. And then for the next part, varies directly as the square of x, so k2 x squared. So we have w equals to k1 x plus k2 x squared. And then for part D, u partly varies directly as v squared, so k1 v squared. And the next part, partly varies inversely as the square root of v, so k2 over the square root of v. And we have u equals to k1 v squared plus k2 over the square root of v. And finally, for part E, part E varies inversely as the cube of t, inversely as the cube of t. So k1 over t cube. And partly varies directly as the cube root of u. Okay, so we have k2 and the cube root of u. And finally, we have w equals to k1 over t cube plus k2 over the cube root of u.